Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in beautiful Fresno, California. Great place to be. It's a great day, and I hope your day's a great day. You know, each day, as we address each day, it's the only day we have at that point in time. It's the only point is now, in this now place and space. So it's got to be great. It's got to be great because it was the gift that was given to each and every one of us by a power greater than we are, power greater than we are that is a power for good no matter where we're at in space or time. And I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad you're here with me today. So I was listening to some of the show from last week, and I thought I had gotten a question about this concept of, why do we call it science of mind? And I have to laugh because I've known ministers in New Thought that oftentimes will refer to this particular New Thought philosophy as New Thought Christianity, which in fact it is. They'll do many different things rather than say that I am a minister of religious science or science of mind, because the minute you tell somebody that you're a minister of religious science or science of mind, you can see their eyes begin to glaze over, and you can see an image of an actor jumping up and down on a couch on a midday TV show, and people are kind of checking out. So I want to talk about this today because, back in the day when Ernest Holmes and the Fillmores and the Brooks sisters and many of the other individuals that were creating these philosophies based in this New Thought philosophy. It's a powerful teaching. Science was really popular, and it was really popular. There was so much going on. Einstein had been, putting forth his theory of relativity, and they were beginning to discover this thing called the quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and all this stuff, and it was exciting. People were excited about science at that time. So, if you put it in context of the time, which is not the context of today, it makes a lot of sense, because what people at that time were noticing in the pioneers of the New Thought teachings was that there were certain principles that if you put those principles into practice in your life, that you could expect at the level of your expectation to see a demonstration or a result. And that was amazing. And it was something that heretofore they thought, it had never been. They begin to say things like, as you believe it's done unto you, and so on and so forth, and come to somewhere about the mid '60s, I think it was, there was a new field in psychology. It was considered new at the time, and it's very prominent and used today, and it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And cognitive behavioral therapy is an exciting field of psychology, because in cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the things that as they work with their clients, their patients in this field, is an understanding that it's not the event that you experience in your life, it's your beliefs about the event that you experience. And that becomes really important when we understand the role that beliefs play in our life experience. But you know what? You can go back to, it's done unto you as you believe. As you believe, is what you'll see, so on and so forth. But we can take that back. There was a time a few years back when there was a fellow walking the face of the earth, and we often refer to him as the master teacher, and he said, seek ye first the kingdom, and all things will be added unto you, and as you believe, it will be done unto you. When you pray believing, my Father will answer prayer. And it's taken 2,000 some years for science to kind of catch up with what he was teaching. And what he was teaching, like I say, in the early days of New Thought, the New Thought pioneers looked at the teachings that this man brought into the world, and they began to put them into practice. And they put them into practice in specific ways, and they begin to see that you could expect certain results. At that time, when science was so popular, something called the scientific method was something that people were really into. And scientific method said basically this, that if you add A plus B and get C, then anybody else that adds A plus B will get C also. Now, that could be two chemicals, it could be many different things, two events, but if you added event A to event B and you got event C, and it consistently happened, then there's a theory that you could develop about that. And that theory could be put into practice by anybody. And so much in the world today that we experience through technology and science and all this great stuff, it falls back to that basic understanding, this scientific theory that A plus B equals C, and if it works consistently, then we can create a theory around that. And the theory we can look at and say, well, it's based on principle. Now, principle is an interesting thing because principle, and one of my favorite quotations is from a fellow by the name of Judge Thomas Troward. And if you're in New Thought, I'm sure you understand, or you're familiar with the name. If you're not, Judge Troward was just a really incredible thinker, and he lived about that time, the latter part of the 19th, early part of the 20th century, and he studied metaphysics, he studied Eastern philosophy, he studied the Bible in all the various languages. He actually learned the languages of the Bible that it was written in so he could study it in the original languages. And one of the things that he put forth was this concept that principle is not bound by precedent. And the first time I heard that quote, I thought, wow, what does that mean? And it sounded good. It sounded powerful. Well, what it means is, as we understand the world today, looking at the world from the understanding of a New Thought person that realizes that what we experience in our life is truly based on our beliefs, but our beliefs are not necessarily based on truth. And we'll get into that a little bit later today. But when we experience something in our life that we see is in alignment with what we call the divine principle, and principle never changes. The principle is the ultimate truth, if you will. If we see something that falls into what we'll call alignment with divine principle, and we see something that's incongruous, that in that same vein doesn't seem to align itself with principle, maybe even seems almost as if it's in opposition, what does that mean? How do we understand that? And oftentimes that could be, all right, for example, we talk about if God is omnipresent, omnipotent, he's omnipotent, omnipresent, and all-knowing, all-powerful. How is it that we have lack and limitation in the world if God is the creator and the source supply of all that is? That seems incongruous, doesn't it? It doesn't seem like it aligns itself with principle. But if you understand that humanity for so long has believed in lack and limitation, has believed that there's a less than-ness, has believed that in order for me to get, I've got to take or get from somebody else. We've created a consciousness, a belief, a fact, if you will, of limitation. But it doesn't make sense. When we begin to realize that there are spiritual principles, that when we put these spiritual principles into practice in our day-to-day life experience, in other words, as the great teacher said, as we believe it is done unto us, when we come to believe that there is no such thing as limitation, we begin to experience a life that is limitless. And that sounds like a big claim in a world today when you look around and you see chaos and stress and all this stuff. But trust me, people that have put these principles into practice have seen at the level that they believe, and this is the other part of that teaching, it's done unto us as we believe. They've seen it change their lives. So the early pioneers of New Thought, as they begin to look at this and they say, okay, there are certain spiritual principles that cannot change. They are a certitude. And one of them is this principle of what we call the law of cause and effect. That for every effect that we see, there's an ultimate cause. But ultimately, behind all causes, there's but one cause, and that cause is God, Spirit, first cause, principle, whatever you want to call it. It's that behind all that is. And so in our studies as a new thought follower, as someone that has come to science of mind and spirit, we begin to study, the first thing we want to understand is what is our concept of the divine? What is our concept of God? Okay? When we expand our concept of God, we take God out of the realm of the guy, the guy that sits in the gold chair and he's got the beard, he's wearing the white hair and he's looking really good, right? We got that guy. That's the guy that if we're in trouble, we pick up the phone and we 911 him, and maybe he'll answer and maybe he won't, and maybe he's a he and maybe he's not, and there's a lot of maybes in there. But if God is everywhere present, if God is the creator of all that is, if God is the source and supply of everything that we see, experience, and express in our life, then we don't 911 anything. What we do is we open up. We open up within ourselves to be a receptacle, a receiver of good, a receiver of peace and harmony, a receiver of abundance, a receiver of health. And so if we're not experiencing those things in our life, then we are not in alignment with harmony, with divine principle. And this is what Judge Trord was talking about when he said principle is not bound by precedent. And the precedent is the condition that we see. If we see someone that's suffering a certain illness of sorts or a condition of sorts, being able to look at that and realize in a knowing way that there's an absolute truth behind that. And in the recognition of that absolute truth, we begin to affect change in our life expression, in our life experience, is a powerful concept. And these are concepts they're taught, they're practiced, and they produce results at the level of our faith and our belief and our commitment to the doing. Last week when I talked about this, I said that spirituality, you can look at as a verb. It's not a noun. It's not a name of something. It's an action. And one of the things that Ernest Holmes used to say back in the day is when we treat, in other words, when we pray an affirmative prayer treatment, that we move our feet. In other words, we take action. It's not about, some people get confused. They think the law of attraction is just all I've got to do is create some kind of a mental equivalent within my mind, hold it there, and the universe is going to rush to me and provide me with all that is. Probably not, truth be told, because we've got to follow it up with some kind of an action. Now, the action may not be a physical action of sorts. Maybe it's certain studies. Maybe it's spending time in devotional meditation. But we have to do something as if what it is that we are attracting to us is already here. And if we don't do that, it'll always be out there or wherever it is that we wanted it from. If it was something that belonged to somebody else, chances are we're not in alignment with principle when we ask for it. But we can ask for something. And again, it's really not an asking. It's more of a declaration that we are accepting the truth that it's here already, that God has gifted us all we need, want, and desire in order to live and experience and express this life. I get excited about this, and today, as I was coming down here, and I to come down here to the show, I drive about 50 miles. And it's a great drive because where I live up in the mountains is not too far from Yosemite National Park. And, to say that it's God's country is my understanding, knowing that everywhere is God's country, and that's true. But where I live, like today, the skies are incredibly blue, and I live in the mountains. I look across the valley, and I see these beautiful trees. And it's just a wonderful place to live life for many different reasons. But it was a couple years ago as I was living there and I'd been there because I've been there about 30 years. I was living there and I have to drive around a lake to go to the little town that I don't live too far from, about 20 miles. And you make the drive every day, or the days that you make it, you go in, you come back, and it's just a drive. And I don't know, about 8 years ago or so, one day as I was making that drive, and my wife was with me, and I stopped. I literally stopped on the road, and I told her, I said, we make this drive all the time, and it's become a habit. But look at all the beauty that surrounds us. We've got the lake, we've got these beautiful trees, and where we live, we have all sorts of wildlife that come across our property. It was like this last week. I had some turkeys, and we've had black bears and all sorts of the other, skunks and raccoons, and we've had mountain lions. It's been interesting living there. But the thing is that when you acclimate to something, you acclimate to your life, you lose the incredibleness, the awesomeness of the life that we live. And that's why when I started the show today, I wanted to declare that today is a great day. And it's a great day because, one, it's a gift of God to us to live, to breathe, and to experience the day. It's a great day that we can be a creator in our own life. It's a day that we can make choices for our ever-present good. And the opportunities don't exist at any other time. So it makes no difference where you are when you declare a great day. Ideally, do it first thing in the morning. That kind of sets the mood for the day. And there is a principle behind that. There is a science behind that. And the science is that in the morning time, that first 20 minutes, our subconscious mind is more open than any other time in the day. Now, why is that important? Why is it important that we have that understanding? Hold that thought. I'm going to tell you when we come back. We're going to take our first break.
Linda Lee Kane is an author of fantasies, thrillers, contemporary fiction, and children's books. Order a book by Linda Lee Kane on Amazon or on lindaleekane.com. Discover retirement living the way it's meant to be and live your golden years to the fullest with Rose Meadow Manor. Rose Meadow Manor offers assisted living, memory, respite, and hospice care. To learn more, call 559-840-1991 and visit rosemeadowmanor.com. Lease or buy this modern two-story Spanish-style building with private offices, open workspace, 2 restrooms, and a break room. This commercial office building is located at 10 East Olive in the Tower District. The floor plan is designed for easy conversion, and all interior walls are movable. Parking available in the rear in a fence-secure lot. Call Mike Briggs Properties at 559-486-6758 or visit MikeBriggsProperties.com. The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find The Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Anyway, before we went to the break, I was talking about this concept of in the morning when you first wake up and claiming the day, because that's when the subconscious mind is most open. That's a scientific fact. Okay, if you're into mind science and what's going on, and some of this is cutting edge stuff in the fields of psychology and stuff. But the thing is, back in the day when Ernest Holmes and Charles Fillmore and these other individuals were putting together these understandings and looking at some of these ancient spiritual teachings and realizing that the efficacy, the truth of those were as prominent or prevalent in that day as it was in the day that they were written, and they are that prevalent and powerful in this day, that there were things, there were principles that you put them into practice. You had the ability to take A, add it to B, and get C every time. And so the idea of A, creating a belief that you are a being of importance, of self-worth, that you are a spiritual being, and you add that to B, that God is everywhere present and that expresses in all of its creation, but specifically as consciousness, as mind, through you in your life, you get C, and that is that you have power within your own ability to create your experience with life. That was a wonderful idea, but it was all suppositional at that time. Science has later on come along and said, you know what? If you work on your beliefs and you change your beliefs, that you can change your life experience. Like I say, back in about the mid-'60s, something called cognitive behavioral therapy became a reality, and today in this world, it's one of the more prominent ways of treating individuals. And a psychologist, a cognitive behavioral therapist, he will tell his clients, his patients, that their experience is not the event itself, it's their reaction to that experience, and their reaction to that experience is based on their beliefs. Wow, there you go. Change your beliefs and you can change your experience in life. The thing is, back in the early part of the 20th century, when there was a Frenchman that came to this country. He was named Émile Couillet, and he developed an affirmation that went something to the effect of, in every day and every way, I'm getting better and better and better. And he trained his people that came to him for training that, if they say this 100 times a day, that it would change their lives. And it was kind of who knew what, but it worked. We know today that by affirming something in a level and in a way that we can connect with it, not just saying the words, but we make an inner connection with it through feeling, through involving and embodying it as part of ourselves, that we change the wiring in our brain. We change the way the nerves connect with each other, and we change the way the brain works. Carl Jung developed a philosophy about this thing he called the shadow. The shadow is a very important thing to understand, and it took me a while when I was first introduced to this to really grasp the concept. But that shadow is that part of our subconscious mind, if you will, where we hold beliefs that are not necessarily beliefs that are in alignment with the who and what that we think we are. And what happens is sometimes when we're faced with a life experience and we react in a way, we go, that wasn't me. I'm not that kind of person. And yet we see it happen. We go, what happened? Well, Carl Jung would say that's the shadow coming forth into our life. Before Carl Jung talked about the shadow, or about the same time, there was a fellow by the name of Christian Larson who was he was a contemporary of Ernest Holmes. He also was a teacher of Ernest Holmes, but the first that I came into contact with Christian Larson, I was reading a book that he wrote, and I don't remember the title right offhand. But if you Google Christian Larson, you can find his books, and they're out of copyright, so you can even find them on the internet to read. And I highly recommend that you do that. But in this particular book, he's talking about beliefs that we hold in mind that we're not aware that we hold. And that was a very interesting concept as an early student in this philosophy. And I began to read further, and he talks about we hold beliefs that we're not aware that we hold. When we hold them in mind, and we hold them at the level of the subconscious mind, subjective mind. And that those beliefs so embed themselves there that as we go through life and we're looking to change our beliefs, and we decide that, we're going to, and you realize, I'll stop here, and you realize that everything you believe today, you didn't believe at one time. The beliefs you have today, you had to learn those. And you can learn new and different beliefs. And you may think that your beliefs are based on fact. Maybe they are. But you need to understand that facts also change. This takes us back to Troward and the concept of principle not being bound by precedent. But anyway, we hold these beliefs that we're not aware of. And we decide that we're going to change our beliefs. And Larson said in his book, he said, our beliefs will actively work to basically sabotage us as we're working to change our beliefs. For someone that comes to new thought, that comes to this concept of science of mind and spirit, and they begin to read the things that some of these books have to share, and they get excited about it, and they begin to move forward, and it works for a bit, and then maybe it doesn't work. Now, there are those that will persevere, that will commit to it, that will follow their commitment, because that's part of their inherent behavior pattern. But there's many other people that they'll get to a point and they'll get discouraged. They'll say, well, it really doesn't work, and they'll move away from it. Truth be told, what's happened is the beliefs that they've held that are contrary to the new beliefs that they're trying to embrace have basically won out. And it's a subtle thing that happens as we begin to do this. Oftentimes when we're doing affirmations, one of the things I tell people when they're working on affirmations, particularly when they're new, they're not used to doing it, they haven't developed a habit of working on an affirmation, that they say the words out loud. Now, out loud best is in front of a mirror looking at yourself in the eyes, and there's good reason behind that, but just say them out loud. And why is it important to say them out loud? Well, it's a couple of things. One, it involves various other aspects of our physical being. We've got the voice, we've got hearing. That's good and fine. But more importantly is as we speak the words out loud, that little voice in the back of our mind that's going, yeah, right, like that's going to happen to me, right? Every day in every way I'm getting better and better. Well, I look at my life circumstances and that's not going to happen. And that little voice is going in the back of our mind. And it's reminding us that, we're here, we're less than, we're never going to be, so on and so forth. But it's not true, but it's there. And it works to hold that place there. And that's a story for a program on another day, how we get there and how we're connected to that. And the ego is heavily vested in that as part of our physical expression of life. But we're spiritual beings. And if we're spiritual beings, and if we understand that as spiritual beings that we are, as the master teacher said, we are created in the likeness and the image of the creative force, source, first cause, principle, God, whatever you want to call it, that has created all that is. As much as I'd like to think God looks an awful lot like me, probably not. But spiritually, we're like this. We're one and the same. As a matter of fact, we are the same because there's only one. And that's another one of those concepts. And that's a concept also that as we go back to the early days of New Thought spirituality, they're talking about this unity. And it predates New Thought for sure. I mean, you have people like Emerson, but you can go back way back in time and you'll find philosophers talking about the unity of everything. But understanding that there is a oneness, a unity. It's not God and I, it's God as me, And so when we get that concept and we're going through our day-to-day life, then we can begin to look at things and we can ask ourselves a question. Am I living in the way of God? Or am I living in the way of God? In other words, am I living as God, expressing as me, or am I living in opposition, in resistance, in blockage to that? And a very easy way to tell, and it's incredibly easy for most people, although they won't take the time to do it, but if you catch this, you listen to this, you'll be one up on a lot of people, and that is just stop. Take time, maybe in the evening time, maybe in the morning time, but just stop when you're alone and look at your life. How's your life going? Is everything in your life hitting on all cylinders? It's an old metaphor from mechanic days, but is everything working the way you want it to work? Chances are there's things in your life that you'd like to see better. Chances are there's things in your life that you'd like to see improved, whether it be relationship, whether it be employment, whether it be your own spiritual life, whether it be in your physical life, abundance, health, whatever. And the chances are that if they need to be improved by your own desires, your own wants, chances are that you hold some beliefs that have held you back. Now, many of us in life, and particularly people that aren't familiar with New Thought, the big thing that they hold, the thing that they really, and boy, they hold on to this tight, and that's their story. And we all have our story, right? Our story is about all the things that happen to us that have put us, planted us, and kept us right where we're at. Becomes very limiting, doesn't it? But if it's my story, that's what I believe. And by believing it, I have basically allowed it to control where I'm at and what I'm doing today. I'm going to take my second break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the power of the story that we hold in our life and what we can do about it. So I'll see you when we come back.
Let Senior Care Authority help you make the right choices for your loved one. Senior Care Authority will meet with you and provide guidance to help you find the best independent living, assisted living, or memory care, offering 6-bed home or large community. Senior Care Authority will help you navigate a complex healthcare system and ensure you get the proper care for your loved one, and the service is free. Visit seniorcare-fresno.com or call 559-900-2076.
I'm Greg Steen, your host for the Truth for Seniors show. Glad you're joining us today and coming to you from Central Valley Talk in the heart of Fresno. So every Wednesday at 2 you can find us, and we'll be here giving you the most up-to-date and accurate information possible, bringing you experts, as we promised, from lots of different fields related to seniors, senior needs, caregiver needs, and everything that goes with that. So if you're looking for the right information and timely information, this is the place to be.
Voir dire, An Oath to Tell and Seek the Truth by Santiago Camarena, depicts the vicious cycle of drugs, crime, and incarceration. It argues that the media, politics, and our laws systematically contribute to this cycle. Get your copy of Voir dire at voirdirestory.com. When you need a dentist who has a passion for superior aesthetics and comfort, you need Dr. Christopher Wong with Cedar North Dental. Call 559-432-4948 or visit cedarnorthdental.com. Fresno Rescue Missions Rescue the Children program is a protected, secure environment providing emergency and long-term services to women at risk, abused, homeless, previously incarcerated, and women with children. The community provides women and their children a place to get away from destructive lifestyles, offering a place to heal, learn, and grow. Give to the Fresno Rescue Mission today. Connect with Dr. Alan Hedberg. Watch Doctor Teach Me to Parent on CentralValleyTalk.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Listen to The Psychology Report anytime at thepsychologyreport.buzzsprout.com. Visit booksbyhedberg.com and order a book for your personal growth. And join the conversation on twitter.com/AlanGHedberg.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Anyway, before we went to the break, I was talking about our story. Our story is a powerful thing, and we're all very intimately attached to our story because, after all, it's ours. It was created as we have lived our life, and it's brought us to this moment, and it may, in fact, own us in some way. A long time ago, early on in my studies, there was a concept that someone shared that went something like, life is like a river, and it's a river that's full of potential and adventure. And as we enter into our life experience, oftentimes we swim up against the current of the river, and it creates problems and it limits us. And I like that concept, but along those lines, another concept came to me too. It's true, life is like a river, and it's full of potential, and there's a lot of good and adventure that's waiting for each and every one of us out there. And adventure is how you define adventure, not what I define or somebody else, but for each of us, the adventure of life is there, and it's meant to be experienced and lived. But the thing is, so many of us, as we have created our story, as we've existed in this river of life, what we've done is we've created our story, and it's kind of like an island, if you will, and we built a wall around that, and we've got a moat that exists inside that wall, and we spend our time swimming in that moat. And everything that we do has to do with that moat, the stagnation of the moat, because there's nothing fresh coming in or through it, and the story that we protect with it. And it is our life experience. When someone decides that maybe it's time that they want to change their life, one of the first things they need to do is look at their story and say, okay, that is my story. It is, but it's just the what is. And not the two most powerful words, but two very powerful words in the English language go something like, so what? When you begin to tell your story, and particularly to yourself, learn to say, so what? I'm a victim because, so what? I was abused, so what? I had this shortcoming, so what? That doesn't negate the intensity of things that we've experienced in life. Things happen, we know that. But it's in the past. It's not here, it's not now. Do you want the past to own you, or do you want to own your now? Do you want to own this time? And you can own this time by basically kicking down, knocking down, blowing up, however you want to do it, eliminating the walls of your moat around your story and say, okay, that is my story. And it is partially responsible for what got me here. But ultimately what got me here is that which created me in the first place. It's divine principle. It's God that got me to this point. My life is an expression of God as me. And as such, my story may be a history, but like all history, it's meant to be in books, not to be pulling my strings today. And so we take our story and we put it away. Well, what happens when we take our story? First thing is, oftentimes we can feel kind of vulnerable. You know, wait a second, if I don't have my story, what am I going to blame? What am I going to lay responsibility on for the things that I'm doing or experiencing that are less than self-affirming, self-supportive? Aha. That should be something that begins to key us in that we're doing things. We've blamed them on our story. Reality is we've been doing things because we've been doing them. And if we've been doing them because we've been doing them, then we can change them. I've shared this before, if you watch the show, and you'll probably hear it many times again, but there is a quote from, he was a Scottish psychologist, and it goes something like, the things that we think and do are limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice that we have failed to notice, there's little that we can do to change until we notice how failing to notice changes our thoughts and deeds. And that's a powerful truism if you begin to realize that we do and we express and we experience and we create things in life that we fail to notice the cause behind them, and we deal with the outcome. We deal with the effects of those things in a negative way. But because we've failed to notice that we have participated as a causative factor through our own conscious choice or subconscious choice or unconscious choice or just trend of thought, however it is that got us to that point, until we begin to come to grips with that, we're destined to repeat it. We come to grips to it by beginning to take note. Well, how do we take note? We take note by stopping and looking at what life has mirrored back to us. And that's what I was saying earlier in the last segment, is we have to stop. If life's not going the way that you want it to go in all areas, stop and evaluate. Where am I? What is life mirroring back to me? And if it's mirroring back to me limitation in this area or obstacles in this area, then if truly I am a child of the divine, if God has created me, if God has provided for me everything I can need, want, and desire in potential, if I'm not experiencing it today, that doesn't mean that I can't. It just means that I haven't put myself in a position to where I'm open and receptive and accepting the good that's there. That's the journey, that's the path that New Thought teaches. And last week I talked about the idea that New Thought it's not a dogma, it's not a theology, it's nothing that you have to give up where and what it was that you grew up believing. And if that's important to you, hang on to it. Don't let go of it. But there are spiritual tools that New Thought can teach you. And the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more in control of your life experience that you are. And you can take those tools and you can go back to wherever. And some people do, and some people decide that maybe they don't. And it's not important one way or another. What's important is for you to realize how important that you are. There's nobody that walks the face of the earth, and I don't care where you're at. That's not important, because God created each and every one of us. Spirit created it, first cause created it, however you want to associate that, created us. If you are a creation of an infinite, divine, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent source of all that is, by gosh, you got to be important. You're not just an asterisk or a period at the bottom of a sentence. You are a spiritual being having an incredible life experience that most of us fail to pay attention to. But the thing is, and the goodness is, and the hope is, that this is an ongoing evolutionary journey. As I look at, and this is just a personal observation, as I look at my life evolution and I look at how humanity has evolved, you can see an ever slow, sometimes, albeit slow, movement towards a greater spirituality, a greater good. That doesn't mean that we don't have things in the world today that have to be reconciled or taken care of. Absolutely. And this is why, for me personally, I believe and I teach what I believe to people that want to embody it and put it into practice in their lives, because there's nothing that you can do. There's no decision that you can make that's not going to affect essentially the world. Now, we do a lot of unconscious stuff. It makes a lot of effects, sometimes not so good, sometimes good. But when you begin to understand the power that you hold in the mere fact that you make choices in your day-to-day life experience, and the choices you make affect other people, and those other people affect other people, and those people affect even more people. There was a movie years ago called something like The 6 Degrees of Separation or something like that. And it basically addressed the issue that we're all connected through somebody else by about 6 degrees, 6 people or whatever. That's a nice idea. But consider the fact that we're all connected because there's a unity, a oneness. Consider the fact that when Ernest Holmes talked about that there was one mind, that mind is God's mind, and that mind is our mind now, that we are all connected in mind. That there's something called race consciousness that is kind of a collection, accumulation of the consciousness of humanity. And that the things where we struggle as humanity aren't God ordained or God infused into humanity, but they're a result of things that people have expressed into this life, sometimes because of things that in race consciousness, sometimes because of their own personal beliefs. The hardest, for my mind, for my belief system, as I believe personally, the hardest thing in the world for anybody to have to deal with is a sense of being totally alone, cut off, that there's no hope. How do you transcend that? How do you move beyond that? We can. And there are people out there. And some of those people create tragedy in the world because they're striking out, they're alone, and in that aloneness, they have no tools in which to create good. But you know what? As each individual in this life experience begins to realize the good that's them, as each individual in this life experience begins to create good within their own life experience, that when you get up in the morning, that you claim the day as good, as a gift from God, that very choice, that decision, makes a change in the world each day. Each and every day, in every way, you are getting better, and you're creating a better world. That is my belief. And it's a belief that I'm not alone in believing, and it's a belief that is life-changing and it's world-changing. So Ernest Holmes and the early pioneers, as they began to look around and they saw these various things, and they saw these various, and we call them spiritual principles, and they saw that when someone put these principles into practice in their life, there were certain demonstrations, manifestations that took place. They began to say, you know what? This is not just a spiritual journey, but it is a spiritual journey that we can look at it from a scientific sort of way. And so that's how science came into this concept of faith and religion, if you will, that there are principles. We put those principles into practice, and we have an expectation to see the fruits of our spiritual practices. That's a pretty awesome thing. So we're going to take our last break. When we come back, and we'll close out for today. I hope you've enjoyed it, because I've been having a good time. I'll see you when we come back.
When you experience flooding in your home, you need to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-454-0655. After soaking in water for only 45 minutes, carpet starts to come apart. Clean Master Emergency Flood Service can help, and not just with carpet repair. They also offer carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, carpet installation, and more. Call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service, and they'll be there in 60 minutes. Call 559-454-0655.
learned a lot, and got a lot of love. If it weren't for the knowledge that I had gained from the classes at PCC, I probably wouldn't be the mom I am today. See, there it goes.
I would love you to meet my son, Aaron. My situation was very difficult. I didn't know how my life was going to turn out.
We graduated in June 2010, and we got married in July. And through family, the Pregnancy Care Center changed our lives.
The Pregnancy Care Center was a huge, vital part in helping me walk through that pregnancy, in educating me and loving on me during that time.
Help build the Reedley College Center for Fine and Performing Arts by making a donation at scccd.edu/donate.
This segment is brought to you by Mike Briggs Properties. The recession's over. It's now safe to sell your home. Call Mike Briggs Properties.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back. It's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. Anyway, as we get started into this last segment, I want to read something to you, and this is from Matthew. It is chapter 6, verse 33. But this particular translation is the annotated Scholars Version, and it's relatively new. And the reason why I share the version with you, the translation, is because as the texts have been translated, they've been translated through and into the context of the times that they came about. And as more current translations have come about, they translate into more of the vernacular of the time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In this particular one, it says here in this verse, it says, you are to seek God's domain and his justice first. He says, and all these things will come to you as a bonus. He's talking about all the things necessary in life. Seek the domain of God first. Seek ye first God, the domain of God, and all these things shall be added unto you as a bonus. When you seek first, as a bonus, all your good will come to you. That's an awesome thought. Well, if you seek first, a couple things. We've got to let go of our story. We've already covered that. Last week we covered the idea of the fear mechanism. We've got to let go of that. We've got to be in alignment with divine principle. Okay, that rules out things like hate and worry and doubt and all this other stuff. And we've covered that a little bit, and we'll hit it again in the next couple weeks. Having gone back or coming back to a weekly segment, I'm able to really kind of put together stuff and move thoughts from one week to the next. And so I'm going to leave you in this last segment with something I want you to think about. And this is from a book. It's called Living the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. And what it is really is a compilation of various talks that Dr. Holmes gave at different times on different topics. And this particular one is entitled God, Your Personal Self, The Life That Is Within You. And I'm not going to read you the whole thing. We'd have to take another show to do that. But I want to read you just the beginning. It says, the life within you is God. Whatever is true of God is true of your life. That's awesome. He says, since your life and the life of God are not two, but one. Awesome. My life and the life of God are not two, but one. And he goes back to this concept of unity. He says, the enlightened have ever proclaimed this unity of good and this oneness of man with God. And that goes back, way back before we can begin to count time in history, I'm sure. But I want you, and this is, okay, now what I'm going to share with you is my own thoughts on the topic. When I've often heard, and you can listen to Dr. Holmes' talks on YouTube if you search Ernest Holmes. There's some great stuff. Keep in mind that when he spoke, it was in the 50s, and times were a little more quaint, and the vernacular might be a little more quaint. But it's worth sitting down and listening, and I mean listening to what he taught, because there's some powerful thoughts and concepts there. But one of the things that Dr. Holmes did on a regular basis is when he would introduce his talks, he would say, there is one life. That life is God. That life is my life now. And you know, I got that right from early on when I was studying New Thought, religious science. But I began to think about it, and this thought came to me several years ago. Think about this. If we all hop in a Wayback Machine, you know, hearkening back to my Rocket J Squirrel days, if you remember that, we go back to the time on this planet when there was no life. Something about, if I got it right, about 45 billion years ago, give or take a week or two, right? But at some point, this planet existed and there was no life. There was water, which is an important component to life, but there was no life. And somewhere between 45 billion years ago and 40 billion years ago, again, give or take a week or two, something happened, and life became. Now, what's your personal belief as to how that happened, whatever it is not as important as to understand that when life happened, and essentially it happened at some point as a single-cell organism or organisms, this life, and it was created. It's an awesome thing, life. Now, my personal belief is that there is a divine creative source of all that is responsible for the life that once began that long ago. But that life began to replicate itself. It grew and it separated, it grew and it separated, it grew and it separated, and it became, at some point, it became the object of environmental stress. We call that evolution, because as it was subject to environmental stress, it began to change, it began to adapt. As a matter of fact, the theory of evolution, oftentimes people think that it's survival of the strongest. It's not true. It's survival of the fittest, which really translates in survival of the most adaptable. Whatever organism is able to adapt best to whatever the given environmental situation is, that organism will thrive in that situation. But the thing is, it all goes back to life at that one point, that one place, and that one time. Think about it. Life started, and it replicated, and it replicated. Now, the cells died off, and they were replaced by other cells. But those other cells didn't come from new life. They came from the life of the original cells that has been transmitted through the process of separation to the new cells that were created. And new cells created more new cells, and ultimately there was a colonization of cells and then a specialization of cells, and all of a sudden we have organisms now that are multicellular. But all the life in all the cells and all those organisms still harkens back to that first life. And as we go along through evolution, all the life that exists on the planet today is related to that original one life. Think about it. Think about life as an energy force. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. We're some part of that. How you understand that is very personal, it's true. But how you understand that in relation to the spiritual cosmology of the allness it is can make a vast difference in how you experience life. If there is but one life, and that life is God, Spirit, that life is your life, my life now. We are connected, we are related, we are a part of, we can never be apart from the wholeness that is, the allness that is, that which we call God. That consciousness is some part of that at the level that we experience life today is exciting. What we can do with consciousness and science, and this is the great thing about, we talk about religious science, back in the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. But science today has, in so many different ways, given the reasoning behind the things that we accepted as spiritual theory We believed those because we could see them work. We could do the experiments, if you will. We could add A plus B. We could get C. We could see it work. We didn't necessarily understand the methodology behind it, but we knew that it worked. Awesome. And we began to experiment, and we began to express, and we began to grow as a spiritual beingness. Now, my personal belief, as I'm going to close today, because I look at the clock, we're getting right to the end, is that this concept, as powerful as it is, and we've seen it move into the non-spiritual world, like I mentioned last week, through various books on positive thinking and so on and so forth, and that's all good stuff, and I highly recommend that for people, even if you don't want to believe in a spiritual beingness behind it. But the thing is that we've let ourselves become overshadowed by the chaos in the world, the energy in the world that seeks to bring doubt, that seeks to bring separation, that seeks to bring fear, that seeks to bring hate, that seeks to take us and make us apart from. As you go through your week this week, look around the world that you live in and see it through the eyes that the Master Teacher told us to see the world, that we love God with all that we are. And because God is everything, there's nothing there not to love. That we love our neighbors as ourselves, and that we move within ourselves to let our story go, because our story keeps us tied to a separateness, that there is a greater truth, a greater God, a greater reality to be experienced and expressed by each and every one of us. And as we do that, we create a greater world. It can't get any more exciting than that. There's people that say they come to New Thought for many different reasons. And whatever reason they come to New Thought, that's valid for them, and I applaud them and I salute them. But whatever reason that you may, if you do find some pull to this, a resonance with what I've been saying over these last couple of weeks, think about it. You are a powerful presence here right now. You are important. You are greatness by the mere fact that God created you. Don't let that go. And I'll see you next week when we come back, because the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you. Truly, wherever you are, God is there. All is well. Blessings, my friends. I'll see you next week.
CentralValleyTalk.com